What is up, everybody? Hoang Zero here, and today we have the deck profile for the BT10 Bloomlord list. And so Bloomlord is one of the new archetypes that came out from the Cross Encounter set. It's a deck that specializes in ramping very quickly as well as expanding board. It's a lot of fun, and it will continue to receive support. So right before we get into the deck list, I do just want to cut really quick to some really cool stuff. Have you ever wanted to own a Hoang Zero / Lumpshop playmat thumbnail design? Well, I have some really great news for you. What you can go ahead and do is you can go to Lumpshop's website for only €10. You can purchase a digital copy, and then you can go to your favorite playmat printing website and go get it made IRL. Let's go! Now, going into the deck list itself, we're going to break it down by the Digitama, Rookies, Champions, Ultimates, Megas, as well as the options. And starting us off into our Digitamas, we do play the 4 Argomon. Now, green Digitamas aren't exactly super strong in this deck, and what I mean by that is currently in the iteration that Bloomlord is in, you don't have a lot of ways to tap your opponent's Digimon, so you don't get a lot of value off of Gummymon, for example. DP is not really an issue because Bloomlord himself gains a significant amount of DP, and then Argomon is probably the best egg choice if you have to choose a default egg because, you know, free memory is free memory, but oftentimes your stack with the Argomon is likely to get blown up, so that is something to take into account. So we do play the 4 Argo because of that reason, right? It's the easiest egg for us to use. In general, has a lot of utility and whatnot. And then for our 5th egg, because we do play Mimi, we play BBmon. And so BBmon is one of those Digi-eggs that wasn't very good for a very long time. And the reason why we play one BBmon over, say, Gummymon or Minomon or whatever it may be, is BBmon gives you DP on your opponent's turn. So why the 1000 DP matters is because Bloomlord only gains DP during your turn. He does not gain DP during your opponent's turn. So Bloomlord on your opponent's turn is 12,000 DP, which means he will die to 4 Tamer Sunrise, which is a very significant threshold in this format. BBmon, however, will put you to 13k. Being at 13k means that you now force Sunrise to either have 5 Tamers or 4 Tamers plus Dorulu, and that's really, really big. So you can make a very strong argument to do 4 BB instead of 4 Argo, but also do note, it's a little awkward with BB because sometimes you don't always have only suspended Digimon. For example, oftentimes the way you end your board state is you're going to do your combo and then you'll pass turn hard slamming a Terrier or a Pomu, for example, to lock out your opponent, and if you do that, then BBmon would not be active. So BBmon is a little bit of an awkward egg at times, but it's probably the second best egg for Bloomlord in the BT10 format, so depending on how you want to look at it, you can go from there. Going into our rookie lineups, we do play 2 of the BT1 Palmon, finally coming back, and I did buy my alt arts. BT1 Palmon is vegetation, so it is a target for all of your effects in Bloomlord, and it's on play, check top 3, and add a level 4 to your hand. This is probably one of the weaker level 3s, unironically, in your deck, just because oftentimes you'll draw into your other level 4s relatively quickly, and then from there on, the Palmon then becomes a little bit of dead weight outside of just being a free body you can play at times. I find myself often digivolving into the Palmon and raising instead of just using it as a call target, but that's just me personally. So with that being said, I do try to minimize how many I run. We play 3 Mushroomon. Mushroomon is a really interesting situation because he's a vanilla rookie, right? And we haven't played vanilla rookies in a very long time. But why Mushroomon is really good is because A, he's vegetation, so he's a call target for all your stuff. And B, he is a really excellent way for us to choke and or set up Digizord and fodder because he's only 2 cost. So we can play him and then tap him for cost for whatever it may be. So for example, we could play for 2, tap for Digivolve for 1, tap, and then go to Blosso or Cherry or whatever it may be, and then you can end turn on Lotus, and that's a really strong play right there. And then our other level 3s, the new BT10 Palomon, absolutely insane. Check top 4, add a vegetation and fairy to your hand, and this is really important, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But this is by far your best searcher. It grabs almost every single card in your deck, minus Chimeramon and minus the freaking whatchamacallit. We just talked about this, I swear. Terriermon, there we go. We didn't talk about it actually. It's the next card up. But yeah, it doesn't grab Chimera and it doesn't grab Terrier, but it grabs every other Digimon in the deck. And so being vegetation plus fairy is really significant. Why? Because Bloomlord is a fairy, right? So that means you can grab Bloomlord plus 1 other vegetation Digimon. vice versa, you can grab Lotusmon, who is a fairy type Digimon, and we'll talk more in detail about why Lotusmon is relevant later on. And then we have 2 Terriermon. Memory Blocker is still very useful at times versus Jessamon, for example. It can be very useful versus Blue Flare. The Mirror Match especially is really huge. So it's just a really nice way, Minerva Loop, for you just to end your turn on or just play around with your opponent. And then 3 Palmon. Palmon is really interesting. It prevents both players, during both players' turns, from special summoning Digimon. So yes, this does hurt you, because obviously you can no longer resolve the Agitarmon effect, or the Sunflowmon effect, for example. Palmon is really, really good this format, because Jessamon is looking very strong. You have Mastemon, who's, interestingly enough, still retaining quite a bit of play rate across the board, it seems like. And then you have decks like Minerva Loop. So this Palmon is just really good against those type of decks. If you don't expect those decks, if you expect to say a lot more BT9 Metal Garurumon, for example, then maybe you can inverse the Terrier-Pomu ratio. Also take into account the fact that the Pomu will hurt you at times as well. So if you're playing into a matchup where you don't need the Pokemon, then you can look instead to just Evo into it in the raising area, right? And then going into our level 4 lineups, we do play the BT1 Togemon. Togemon is Wind Digivolving. Check X amount of cards in your deck. I want to say it's like 4. It could be 3. I can't see it in front of my face right now. But it's like 3 or 4. Check that, and then grab any level 5 or higher. Togemon is a really great card because it's another card that just grabs pieces if you need it. So for example, if you have Agitar, tap Agitar, call out Palomon, check top 4, grab your pieces, Evo, Togemon, grab another piece, and then now you've essentially gone +3 in your hand, and that's just insane value. We do only play the 1 because it is not a valid target for the Agitarmon or for the Sunflowmon, which does kind of suck a bit, but it is a vegetation, so you can grab it. And then the thing about Togemon is that the level 5 or higher that it grabs does not specify green. So for example, you could grab Chimeramon off the Togemon, which is a really, really nice tech. You can also grab cards like Merciful Mode or Dexmon if you decided to run that. We play 4 Red Vegemon. Red Vegemon is an absolutely crazy card in this deck because it is a 1-cost evolution that's 3000 DP, so it is a target for Agitar, it's a target for Sunflow, and it's a 1-cost Evo, so you can Evo into that over the raising area. And that gives you a lot of tempo plays that allows you to climb into your Agitar a lot quicker as well. We play 4 Sunflow. It's a valid target for all your effects. It itself will tap cards on your board. That plays in your Bloomlord strategy. It'll also spawn out an additional body. And then its ESS allows you to draw cards whenever you tap a Digimon by your effect. So just in general, Sunflowmon is huge utility. It's great at expanding the board in more ways than you can imagine, and it gives you extra cards in your hand to refill after you summon out your hand. We played 2 Weedmon. Normally, the common list you would see is instead of 1 Toge, you would see 3 Weed instead. Weedmon being a valid target as well as a 1-cost evolution is very valuable. But we do off-value the Togemon specifically because without Hydramon and without EX3 Palmon, we lack a lot of ways to interact with our opponent's board. And that's why Chimeramon is such a big thing, which we'll talk about in a bit. And Togemon being able to fetch the Chimeramon is really nice. And you could look for room to find Arbormon if you wanted to have hybrid for lethal. Arbormon is totally acceptable. Maybe you can look to cut the Toge for Arbor. Maybe you cut a 1 Sunflow or maybe a Weed, whatever, something along those lines for the Arbor. You can also do Petaldramon if you want to be kind of spicy with it, because Petaldramon is a vegetation, so it is a searchable hybrid by a lot of your effects. But yeah. So those are some suggestions you could do in the level 4 lineup. And then going into our level 5 lineup, level 5 is probably the most volatile because there are so many great cards in the Bloomlord level 5 lineup. So the first card we're going to talk about is Cherrymon. Cherrymon is 3-cost evolution or Digisorption -2, so it becomes a 1-cost. And then during your opponent's turn, once per turn, you can redirect an attack to a suspended Digimon. So why Cherrymon is really good is because of the Crossheart matchup especially. So with Crossheart, if their Cross 4 dies before their end of attack ability resolves, then they don't get the restand on the Tamer, they don't get all 4 pieces back, and you just absolutely slow down their game plan. So Cherrymon is very excellent at doing that. Cherrymon with BBmon is 8,000 DP, which means it will perfectly trade with the Cross 4, so that's another reasoning to run the BB if you want to go about that line of play. But Cherrymon is not very good versus decks like Jesmon, versus decks like the Metal Garurumon, because they just have a lot of ways to play around it. And so if you expect a lot of decks like that, I would say Cherrymon to 1 or 0, but if you expect a lot of Crossheart, then Cherrymon at 2 or 3 is probably valid. But next we have 4 Agitarmon. This card is absolutely crazy. I think Agitarmon is probably the only level 5 I don't feel comfortable bumping down to any less than 4 TBH. Agitarmon is once per turn, you can tap a Digimon on your board and then special summon a Vegetation or Fairy with 3000 DP or less. So again, that's like most of your deck. It's just a free body to call, and then ESS, when you would suspend one of your Digimon, gain a memory. So he plays directly with the Bloomlord's ability, so he'll net you back +1 memory. He calls additional bodies that play into the Bloomlord strategy. It's just, in general, the best level 5 for you to Digivolve into in Raising. It's just a really strong card in general. Also, it's just super sick. We have 3 Blossomon. Blossomon, similarly to Cherrymon, is a searchable Digisorption. All right. So being searchable, it has a lot of incentives to it in itself, but unlike Cherrymon, it's a -3 to the Digisorption cost. So it'll end up being a 0 cost evolution, taps your body. It just plays very excellently into the Bloomlord strategy, because for example, you can Blosso, tap stack, Evo into Bloomlord, untap, and then play the game from there. I think Blossomon is such an actually insane card that there was a very valid argument in EX3 prior to BT11 being revealed to hit Blossomon on the ban list, like limit it, for example, because it was a searchable 0 cost evolution, and Hydramon was absolutely a powerhouse that was contesting Crossheart during the JP iteration of the format. But now that we have Black War Greymon and BT11, again, this is its own topic for a different video. The deck has obviously gotten toned down a little bit, so no need. I probably don't need to hit it for right now. Maybe we'll see again in the future. And then we played 2 Chimeramon. So the reason why Chimeramon is actually such a powerhouse in this deck, reason number 1 is without Hydramon, without EX3 Pokemon, you have very little ways to interact with your opponent's board. So how do you get rid of Terriermon, for example, or a Gazimon? Well, the answer is you have to Grunda Soul, right? That doesn't feel great because that's a 6 memory play. Or you have to Samadi, and that feels very inefficient, having to tap your Digimon to tap their Digimon, and then having another Digimon that is still able to swing. That doesn't feel great. That really does not feel great, and so that's why we play the Chimeramon, because it will go ahead and pop those floodgates. Not only that, but it's also a great extender. So for example, if you have the Agitarmon, right, and Agitarmon tap itself, play a level 3, for example, and then the level 3 goes into Sunflow, and then Sunflow goes out Red Veggie, for example, and then you can Jog Rest the Sunflow plus the Red Veggie into a Chimera, and maybe that represents lethal in certain situations. So not only is it a fantastic extender, but again, it's really important to pop floodgates with it. Going into our level 6 lineup, we do play the 4 Bloomlord. This is the the king of the deck. It's the reason why we're playing this deck. It's such an insane card, actually. Bloomlord is, when Digivolving to this card, you may tap one of your Digimon, and then for every tapped Digimon on your board, gain 1 memory. I might specify Vegetation and Fairy. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do know, the general effect is for every tapped Digimon on your board, gain it back in memory, and then you do gain Piercing for the turn. And then if you have 2 or more, Digimon, 2 or more tapped Digimon at the start of this whole shebang, restand, gain Piercing. There we go. I had remembered it off my head. And then the other effect is for every 2 tapped Digimon, gain plus 2000 DP, as well as security attack +1. So on average, you're going to have a 14k +2 or a +1 security attack Bloomlord, and then it's very easy for you to have the 16k 3 damage Bloomlord as well. It's really fantastic card to extend because it restands. So for example, if you have double stack and then you do a Bloomlord on first stack and then you do your combo and then you can go Bloomlord on the second stack and then Bloomlord will restand on there and then you can go again. It's just a really fantastic card, super high rolling as well. And then it'll pay back its memory cost at least at the very least, it'll make itself very cheap more often than not, and with hidden potential, it's just disgusting. And then Lotusmon, like we mentioned before, it is a fairy type Digimon, so it is searchable by the Palmon. Lotusmon's ability is during both players' turns, whenever either player hard plays a level 4 or lower, tap that Digimon. Why Lotusmon is so significant is because A, versus Jesmon, all of their sisters get tapped, and that's kind of nice. But B, Cross 4 is a level 4. Surprise. So Cross 4 being a level 4 means that if they hard play it into the Lotusmon, it will immediately get tapped. And by immediately tapping the Cross 4, they will not be able to swing immediately with it and get off its skill. So this essentially shuts down the Cross 4 play. That shuts down a lot of their tempo, a lot of their card draw, and then it makes it a lot harder for them to look for the Sunrise Buster onto Lotus. If you have the BB1 Egg, for example, Lotusmon hits 13, and then it's even more problematic for them to deal with. And so that is the level 6 lineup, and then going into our options lineup, we do play the 1 Grande Sol, or Grandel Sol, I'm not really sure, but because without Hydramon and without EX3 Palmon, I know I keep saying this, but like it's really important actually, you lack removal, and so we run the 1 Grande Sol because it's an additional form of removal. It's an additional security bomb that we can play with. It just gives us a lot of it gives us a little bit more flexibility in our options. And then our hidden potential discovered. This card is busted. It really should be at 0. I don't know why it's at 1. I digress. This card is stupid because you tap your stack and then you go into Bloomlord for free, mind you, and then Bloomlord will gain back all of the memory as well as untap. So Bloomlord suddenly becomes like a +2 memory, plus like 3-4 memory play if you just want. And when Hydramon comes out, Hydramon is also a free evolution off of the HPD, and like why? Like why is that a thing? But you play the 2 Samadi. Samadi is a really strong card because it can tap out cards like the Taiki, for example, against the Crossheart matchup, or the Kiriha if you play against Blue Flare, and that's one of your harder matchups as well. It's also an additional way for you to tap out your own stacks to set up for your Bloomlord play, or it can set you up to get rid of a memory blocker if necessary. If you do find yourself wanting to play an additional Samadi, just because it's a cheap card, it's a good security bomb, it has a lot of utility in the deck, I would say cut a Grande Sol for the 3rd. And then we play 3 Mem Boost. So the Mem Boost and Mimi ratio, right? And we all, at this point, we know what Mimi does, right? So I don't think I need to spend too much time talking about Mimi. But Mimi and Green Memory Boost, what's interesting is the ratio at which you put these two. So for example, Death X is a huge factor in our format, right? And Death X is getting played as an answer to Jesmon, Crossheart, all these other go-wide decks. So because of that, Bloomlord happens to get caught in the crossfire, and Bloomlord absolutely, it hurts. It gets smacked up by Death X. And so there is an argument, actually, to play 0 Mimi. If you play 0 Mimi, it mitigates the likelihood that Death X is going to hit you as hard as it potentially could. And if you play 0 Mimi, then you would play 4 Green Memory Boost. But vice versa, if you don't play any Green Mimi and then you play 4 Mem Boost, then you have a much more difficult time playing against Memory Blocker. So in that case, you'd obviously want some Memory Tamer to play around the Memory Blocker. And then there's the other line of reasoning that we have to talk about is the fact that Mimi is just a really great play starter as well as game ender. If you don't run Mimi, you can't run hybrids. Obviously, if you run Mimi, then hybrids become on the table. If you run Mimi, it gives you potentially an additional body to tap for your effects. It gives you an additional body to swing for a game, as well as just being a really strong early game play to set you up for additional memories. And then you can, like, for example, Digivolve Agitar without passing turn. It also gives you an additional strong security bomb because, again, Mimi represents a lot. So the question then really becomes, do you fear Death X enough to play 0 Mimi? And if you do, then you play 4 Mem Boost, and then you can fit like another Grande Sol, Samadi, maybe a level 7, for example. Or do you value the positives that Mimi brings to the table, and you just decide to play 2 Mimi instead, right? So that's like a very like genuine argument that you have to decide there. So in this list, we decided that the pros of Mimi they outweigh the cons, right? Like if our opponent has Death X, they have Death X. Like we just have to like try and close the game, Mimi's good at closing the game, and it gives us that avenue. We're like, okay, maybe we do want to play the hybrid, right? And yeah. So some cards that you could also entertain, for example, Shivamon is a card that is very interesting because security control seems to be picking up a lot of steam, specifically because of the presence of decks like Melga, Grandis, etc. So Security Control is still a prevalent deck. So what you could do is you could tech in Shivamon to not only turn off their options, but also get that burn. Another really strong tech that you can look into is Merciful Mode, right? Merciful Mode is on Digivolve, or when Digivolve, for every Mega underneath this card, pop one of your opponent's Digimon, return 10 cards from their trash to their stack, and then at the start of your turn, Digivolve down, and then if you do burn your opponent for 1 security. And why Merciful Mode is so interesting is A, it's searchable by Togemon, so like a little bit more incentive to play Togemon, but B, it gives you a pop, and like we said, we lack a lot of removal in this deck. The pop is very valuable, and then being able to put back 10 cards from trash is really good versus decks like Jesmon, so because you bot deck all their sisters or additional Royal Knights. You can bot deck 10 cards from decks like Minerva Loop, for example. That has a lot of utility as well. And just other graveyard recursion heavy decks and whatnot. So those are some other techs that you could potentially entertain. And yeah, so right after this, we'll get straight into the combos.
Okay, so we're going to do the combo tutorial. So this turn assumes that we are starting at 3 memory, whether that's from Mimi or Boost, it really does not matter, but the idea is that we have 3 memory. In our raising area, we have Agitar on top, we have Sunflowmon ESS, and we have Argomon. Our rookie has no ESS. None of them do in Bloomlord. We're going to go ahead and promote. Over here we have our hand. So what you're going to do to start off your turn is you're going to do Agitar Effect. Agitar Effect is going to tap itself. Agitar Effect is going to go out and call, say, Palmon. Okay, so a couple of effects will now resolve. You can do Palmon Effect to check top 4 if you want. It really, this part of the combo does not matter, so we'll just like go ahead and we'll grab Mushroomon. Like, yeah, cool. Okay. And then Sunflow Upon Effect will allow us to draw an extra card. Like, cool. Okay, yeah. We'll put that to the side. So we go, okay, so that's a currently +2 or +3 potentially if you grab Bloomlord or Lotusmon off of the fairy component. And then from there, what we can go ahead and do, because we still have 3 memory, is so the basic line of play that we do have is we can go in from Agitar into Bloomlord, okay, and so that will cost us 4 memory. So we go to 1, and then we draw a card, yeah, draw a card, and then Bloomlord effect will now activate, so we're going to go ahead and tap the Palmon, alright, and then so we have 2 suspended Digimon on our board. That means we gain back 2 memory, so we go to 1, and then Agitar effect will now activate, we gain back 1, Bloomlord untaps, and now we are at 2 memory, and then Bloomlord, when it swings, will now swing for 14k with 2 security checks. So that is the super basic bread and butter combo that you're often going to see in this deck, and obviously we can extend that even further by, let's say we reset this. Okay, so let's put all this back. We have the Agitar stack over yonder, right? So start a turn, we're at 3, Agitar, move out, Agitar effect's gonna activate, we'll draw a card off of Sunflowmon, it really does not matter. We're gonna go ahead and instead of calling it Palmon this time, we're gonna go ahead and call it Red Veggie. Okay, Red Veggie is, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna tap the Red Veggie to go into the Blossomon, okay? And then from there, we can go ahead and do is we can go and play Palmon for 3, do the thing, grab whatever cards, and then we're gonna go ahead and evolve the Agitar into the Bloomlord. It's not untapped yet, but there you go. So it's gonna go to 4, effect, tap, effect, gain back 3, effective Agitar, gain back 0, untap. So now we are at 0, we have this board currently, and then you can swing and do your thing, and then from there, on that, we could end turn on Lotusmon. So yes, you pass your opponent 4, but they can't play the cross 4. It puts them in a really awkward position. So that's another like little combo that you can do. That's off the 3 memory, and that's with the Digisorption, right? And there's like a lot of different ways that you could also play it out, TBH. Like if you, for example, wanted to do a double Bloomlord play, what you can go ahead and do is, so we'll put this back, we'll put the Bloomlord here, and then we'll do all this, we'll grab all that, and we bring the Agitar out. We are at 3 memory, right? So we have that. Let me show you why HPD is a dumb card. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna Agitar. Okay, Agitar, go ahead. Palmon, grab card. Okay, cool. Then we're gonna go Sunflow for that, or Sunflow effect. We're gonna go ahead, we'll play, say, Red Veggie. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead And we are going to play the Hidden Potential. Hidden Potential, tap Edge. Gonna go ahead, go into Bloomlord, gain +3 memory, untap, cap. And then for example, from here, you could go Pomo. Okay, go to 1, tap for Digiswarption, and we'll do it over Sunflow. And then swing. This is 3 checks, 16k, so chunk, 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 chunk. And then you go boop, and then you go boop, and then you untap, and then here's an extra 3 checks. And then like if you have hybrid or something else along those lines, like it's just kind of crazy, right?